Okay, let's try and explain this. My mother, she died of COVID. COVID stands for coronavirus. So she got a cold, just like we all do every year for the last, God knows, probably 1,000 years. Oh my God, you got that cold that's going around? Be careful, there's a cold going around. It's fucking miserable when you get that cold. Well, my mother got the cold in 2013. And she treated it with chicken soup like any Jewish mother would, and it turned into bronchitis. The bronchitis got out of hand, and she treated that with erythromycin and Advil cold and sinus, and that got out of hand, and it turned into walking pneumonia, and that got out of hand, and her lungs collapsed, and she got failure of her kidneys, and she died. And that, I was devastated. My father died a couple of days later. It was crazy. But regardless of that, I started thinking about that lately. There's 250 million Americans. And every year we go through this. Oh my God, I got that stupid bug that's going around, and we're miserable, and we're in bed, and we're dying, and we don't know what the hell's going on. So I started looking up numbers and thinking about numbers, because numbers can be portrayed good or bad for the same number. You know, when Wall Street was going up and it hit 10,000, everybody was dancing in the streets. When Wall Street came down to 10,000, people were jumping out of windows. These numbers are the same thing when you take away the human element. So what's my point in all this? In 2013, 2.5 million people died of pneumonia. Did they go to sleep healthy the night before, wake up in the morning with pneumonia? No. They got a cold. It turned into a virus, and it turned into bronchitis, and then their lungs shut down, and then they got pneumonia because water got trapped in their lungs because they couldn't breathe right. And a certain amount of them took steroids, and the steroids helped, and some of them that didn't help. And if you take today's numbers and today's panic and today's fear with the same approach, there's 250 million Americans. You throw a bad cold at 250 million Americans. Well, half of them, their immunity system's just built right, and they say, got it, no problem, asymptomatic, never even knew about it. Or they don't even catch the cold, they're not exposed because they live on a farm or wherever they live. But the other half, 125 million, they're exposed to it, and some of them are fine, and some of them are asymptomatic, and some of them reject it entirely, and some of them get sick. And then of the sick people, some of them are fine, and some of them need a little help, so they go to their doctor, and especially now, because they're like, oh my God, what the hell's going on? So they go get tested, whereas before, if you got a cold, you're like, I got a cold, leave me the fuck alone. Now you're like, oh, well, let me stick this thing up my nose. Okay, great, you're taking care of yourself. But if 100 million people are exposed to something, well, then out of that, some of them are going to be older. And those old people are going to get a cold that's going to turn into bronchitis, that's going to turn into pneumonia, that's going to make their kidneys fail while they're intubated and kill them. They're going to die. It's sad. And on the other side, you have all these children that get exposed, and a lot of them won't catch it, and some of them will be a mild cold, and some of them will need a little more help. And out of the ones that need a little more help, some of them can't be helped, and they'll go to the hospital, and the hospital will intubate them, God forbid, and try and save them. And then there's going to be a story. We're not going to hear the story because it doesn't work for politics, but the story is, you know, when this kid was 50, he was going to find out he had genetic heart failure or lung failure or something that maybe it would have been cured in the future, but today in 2020, they have an undiscovered genetic failure or some kind of problem that an aggressive cold or pneumonia, which is as aggressive as it can get, is going to exploit and hurt them. Right now, we are living in fear. We are getting our rights taken away. If you're scared, you're going to get sick. And because of that, you're not living your life. The rights that you give up, somebody actually did die for it. They didn't might die for it. They're dead. And they're dead so that you have the right to live your life. So now you take these same numbers. 3 million people died in 2013 from getting a cold from coronavirus. 800,000 of them were children. We didn't shut down the global economy over this. Nobody's talking about, hey, there's 1.6 million cases. That's so much better than it was in 2013. You want to, like, I got friends blaming Trump. This is Trump's fault. Listen, the last thing, on my list of people that could have genetically taken a bat and turned it into the worst bat soup that shut down the world, Trump would be last on the list. Because he had a locked election, and now he doesn't, maybe because his economy is failing. So he didn't create this. And everybody says, well, it's his fault 160,000 Americans died with COVID. Okay, it's also his fault that 2 million didn't die, 5 million didn't die, 20 million, the way everybody's acting. I'm surprised 100 million didn't die. Blame him for that. You want to blame him? 250 million. Well, 1% of 250 million is 2.5 million. So if 1% of the population died and you want to blame him, okay. But you're blaming him for 160,000 people died? Why aren't you congratulating him that 2.5 million didn't die? And, that's another thing. They twist the data. I'm a Wall Street guy. You can take a number and make it good or bad. Well, if you take the numbers and look at the data and the way they're presenting it, like today, they say 190 people died in Florida, reported. That doesn't mean 190 people died today of COVID. What that means is they reported 190 of the deaths. 46 died, and that's 46 too many in my opinion, but nevertheless, it's not 190 people died. It's just how they decide to report it. And what do they actually say? All these people died. 160,000 Americans died with COVID. Well, that's a shame, but they didn't die of COVID. There's a big difference there. You got to watch the words. That's how advertising works. That's how politics work. There's some truth in there, but there's also some manipulation. So when somebody says 160,000 people died with COVID and not of COVID, you're being played. My point is this. They turn around, they're like, wear a mask. A surgical mask, a K95, a cloth. No, any mask. Take an old shirt, turn it into a mask. Start making them, make money off selling masks. Because they're all having meetings that have nothing to do with safety. What they have is meetings about obey and comply. Fauci has a meeting, and he's a brilliant guy. He wrote some great books. He's an authority for sure. But he has a meeting, cover your eyes, cover your nose, because this thing's a 3-micron disease, and even the K95 respirator, here's one, brandy new. It's 95. The other 5, that's 5 microns. This is a 3-micron disease. It's not doing shit. And all these masks were made for a specific purpose. A doctor who's trained on how not to touch it, how not to fix it, don't wear it twice. We're all putting them in our pockets and putting them back up, putting it on our chin. That's it. It's over. It's fucked once you put it on your chin. And not only that, it's what's called a reflective response. If a bomb goes off and it's going to kick out a fireball and you see a fireball coming your way, you do this. If a car is coming your way, you do this. It's called a reflective response. It's not going to help you. The car is still going to kill you. The bomb is still going to kill you. Well, the mask is medically known as a reflective response because at 3 microns, it will go through your ears, through your eyes, through your mask. You will get sick, and it's not doing fucking shit. You're going to tell me it helps me not spread the disease because I'm asymptomatic or I don't even have the disease? That's bullshit. You're giving up a global economy. You're giving up your rights. You're giving up your businesses. Let me tell you, when the buildings fell in New York, it took 8 years for us to feel the real pain. It took 8 years. This will take 8 years, but 8 years from now, 5 years from now, people that had growing businesses that were doing great are going to be living on the street. There's 143,000 evictions in Silicon Valley, the richest place in the world. There are 700,000 evictions waiting here in Florida. When this, just like Jeffrey Epstein, just like this, just like whatever's, I don't care, the Ayatollah Khomeini, when this is over and those people are left behind without benefits, without health care package, whatever you want to call it, a hero's deal, and the politics are over and the election is over, those people are in trouble. They're going to get evicted. And now they got an eviction on their record. They can't even get another apartment. They're dead. They're going to live on the street, and there's no reason for it. Why? Because of a mask? Because of a disease that kills 3 million people a year without COVID-19? This is insanity, my friends. Again, you're giving up your rights and your freedoms because you might die, but you got those rights and freedoms because people did die. I'm not saying don't wear a mask. Go ahead, wear it. I'm not saying don't be careful. You better be careful. It's dangerous. But it's always been dangerous to get pneumonia. I think in the medieval times, you got pneumonia, like the devil's in you, you're going to die, and if not, we're going to kill you, or whatever the circumstances are. It's always been dangerous. It's not changed. This time it changed a little bit. One, there's a political motive for sure, because when the swine flu came, you didn't see the Democrats shutting down cities. Everybody was like, it's a flu. We'll fix it or we'll die. Here you have a totally different situation with a disease that's probably genetically manufactured to be more dangerous than any other common cold that's ever hit the planet. Nevertheless, we have immunity systems. We need to use them and not destroy our lives. I know an old joke, and I'm going to try and finish up like that. I know this old joke about an old woman who goes to a doctor and says, "Doc, am I going to die?" And the doctor says, "Well, do you party a lot? Do you go out all night and drink?" She says, "Oh, I never drink." He says, "Well, do you do a lot of drugs?" She says, "No, I never do drugs, nothing that you haven't prescribed." He says, "Well, do you have a lot of sex? Like, do you go out and meet people and have sex?" He says, "I haven't had sex in 40 years since Herbert died." Doctor looks at it and says, "Who cares if you die? You're not alive." That's my point. You guys are so scared you're going to die. You're not living your life. And, it's temporary. It's temporary. Nothing's temporary. This is about obey and comply, not about a disease. Again, Fauci tells you, don't go out without a mask. Don't go out without goggles. Don't wear a helmet. Stay home. Then he's at a baseball game sitting next to people like this, with two of his friends sitting right next to him, not even wearing masks. Same day. What kind of hypocrisy is this bullshit? I think that, maybe this other doctor that talked about HCQ or that medicine, maybe she is a quack, but the one thing she did say is, "I double dare any of you to take a blood test and show me you're not already on it," because it's already shown that that's the vaccine. It's just Trump endorsed it, and that's it. Nobody likes him. I don't like him myself. I've done business with him. But he does come out on top. People want to blame him for 160,000 deaths. Why don't you thank him for it not being 500,000 deaths? People want to blame him for going bankrupt. Bankrupt it's a financial tool, the best one in the world. You got debt that's holding you back and a set of rules. You restructure the rules. You try and restructure so that you survive. The debt won't let you. They try and take advantage of you. You go into court. You reorganize. The court stops them from stopping you, and away you go. Everything that everybody is pointing at is total bullshit. You want to talk about COVID? Then know about COVID. You want to then think, what's the past? How did we get here? You want to know about politics? Then know about politics. Then have your opinion. Not what you feel, but actually know. You want to know about the Constitution and rights? Well, then read about your rights. Don't just stop at 1, 2, 3, 4, Fifth Amendment. Go all the way. And then you'll understand that it's not Trump's job. You're blaming a guy. It's not his job to protect you. His job is to protect you from other countries, which he's trying to do, and you're fighting him on it. I'm not pro-Trump on this. I'm not anti-Trump. I'm not pro anybody, but this is just fucking out of control. People are getting hurt, and there's no recovering from the financial loss that's going on. These people are going to end up homeless. We need to start acting like a country. I don't want a president that hates his country. I want a president that loves his country to lead the country, but you also need a whole bunch of politicians that love their country and love their citizens, and they're acting like they fucking hate us. So be careful. Wear your mask, because it makes people feel better, and maybe it will save one life, and that's one good life. And try and stay safe, and I just thought I'd vent my 2 bits. Anyway, take care. Have a good weekend. Bye.